on the implementation team. So I kind of wanted to get your take on how you might answer some questions differently than how I might answer, and see where maybe kind of the pros or cons of one approach or another. So I know one question that we all get asked a lot on the I team is, hey, I'm coming up on an annual premium, but I don't have the full premium together. Should I reduce the paid up edition rider, or should I just go to monthly payments and fully fund it? How would you typically answer that for a client?
So I hate to answer questions with it depends, but
Right?
ultimately the purpose of the policy to begin with was to have cash value to use to pay for stuff, whether that's debt consolidation or funding an investment or making an upcoming purchase, whatever it might be. So I really like to prioritize the PUA first. I and I always disclose that to the client. So I let them know, hey, we can do a base only where your base will be paid up for the year, but there's not really going to be any new cash value or loan availability to speak of. There'll be a little bit, but there's not
Right?
going to be a whole lot. So just keep that in mind. Alternative, but at the same time, you'll still have the ability to contribute those paid up additions as a lump sum or gradually, at a later date when you're able to.
Yeah.
Alternatively, we could go with a monthly premium of base and full PUA,
Right.
helps them out cash flow wise. But it's still keeping those PUAs going in, so they're having those upticks in cash value. So there's still loan availability there. It's just not all of it
Yeah.
from day one. So I'll usually encourage them more towards the route that allows them to continue doing the infinite banking concept. Um, but it is situational depending on the individual's circumstances.
Nice. Good. Yeah, I always like to kind of look at too, depending, and to your point, there's a lot of the it depends, and I think the first thing it depends on is what is the client's goal, like kind of what phase of IBC are they in. We kind of generalize that there's three, I like to call it three and a half different reasons of what someone can use their policy in infinite banking for. They're either paying off debt, they're either making a major purchase or even a recurring purchase. That's my half, or they're investing in by buying assets or even by growing their business. So to that point, that their need is going to drive that, is going to dictate how soon do we need cash value, and depending on the client or what how you're earning money. If it's someone that's like a real estate investor or a realtor or a business owner that they've got a busy season coming up, they know they'll have more cash coming in the door, even if it's like a tax refund. Then that makes it a little bit easier to say, let's do the base only, base and a tiny bit of PUA, and then boy, you'll get caught up on that PUA by a month or two from now when that big check comes in, and then you'll be fully set. Whereas someone else that's maybe just working to pay off their pile of credit cards, maybe just going to that month to month, but fully or mostly funding a monthly premium would be better. So then they've got that cadence, they can better see, hey, here's my income, my expenses, and now I'm still gradually and every single month automatically paying myself first into the policy, so that then every quarter I can take out another loan and then smash down more of those credit cards.
Yeah. And in just kind of having this conversation too, it makes me think about a couple a couple different topics that aren't that often spoken about, and because they're not directly related to IBC, but they're fundamental to being able to practice it long term and be successful with it. And that is individual savings rate,
Yeah.
and also not maxing out the policy loan availability,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Myself personally, and again, this is just a me thing. I always leave at least a year's worth of base premium in loan availability in any of my
Oh,
policies.
nice. Yeah.
So that way, if there was ever something crazy happened where, you know, a loss of income or whatever, life happens to all of us.
It does.
I know that I've at least got a year's worth of base premium plus $120 for the UA,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
I at least have that on reserve in the unlikely case that I need it.
That's really good because you're thinking long range and you're thinking and you're giving yourself that buffer and that availability. And I guess to that point too, as you're talking about cash reserves, let me just ask you a different question that we hadn't planned on yet. How much, how do you think about how you personally hold your cash reserves between in your policy versus like liquid cash in a savings account or equivalents?
So I actually got this. I had heard Hannah say it a bunch of times,
Okay,
but reading Nelson's second book, Building Your
warehouse
Wealth,
of wealth. Yeah.
is what really made it click. Is money has to be stored somewhere,
Mhm.
right? And I talk to a lot of clients that have policy loan balances, outstanding balances on their policy loan, but they have these chunks of cash, idle cash sitting in savings, money market, checking account, whatever it might be, right?
Yep.
So that cash is just being stored there, right? Well, there's this hole in their policy that is the loan balance
Yeah.
where they could store that cash there, reducing the amount of interest accruing on the policy loan,
Mhm.
keeping their cash value in a healthier place, and it's a better net positive for them because their savings account, even if it's a high yield savings account, is earning a lower interest rate than the loan interest costs them. Plus, the interest that they're earning in that is going to be taxed,
Taxable.
right?
Nice.
So, yeah, I really encourage clients don't sit on idle cash in a if you have outstanding loan balances on your policies, don't sit on idle cash in a checking or savings account. Sweep that money over and store it inside the policy.
Yep.
Okay. And I think that's a mental thing for a lot of people is they think paying a loan is like to a policy is like paying a loan to a bank where that money's gone forever,
Right. Yeah.
right?
You're just giving away. It goes in that black hole. Never see it
Right.
again.
Now all my cash is gone because I paid off this debt. It's
Not
not like
anymore.
that with the policy. You're storing the money rather than storing it here, you're storing it there. It's restoring the loan availability in the policy so that liquidity is there when they want or need to use it again.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, very similarly of looking at, when you see people with money just sitting there, I've also seen it in the inverse where, I've got a client in mind where I was talking with him and his wife. He had a much older policy, actually one they had set up before they came to Money Multiplier, and had tens of thousands of dollars sitting in that nice old well-aged IBC policy. But then he also had a HELOC because he was doing velocity banking with that. And as he was looking, okay, what's my next move? What do I need to do? I pointed out and said, well, look, you're paying this interest rate on your policy, and you've got all this money sitting over here, and you're paying this bigger interest rate on your HELOC. Again, you've already got the velocity banking down. Let's change where some of that's at. And again, let's respect both lines of credit, our bank and the HELOC bank. Respect both of them equally, and even ours better. So let's just adjust how much is going back to that policy every month as a loan repayment. But boy, let's just move that money over. And I went through the math with them of looking at just doing the simple interest. Loan balance times interest rate divide by 12. That's how much you're spending. It's costing you for interest each month, looking at the volume of interest, not just the rate of interest. But in this case, the rate also indicated what the volume would be. So yeah, I think that's a great one of really looking at where are we storing our cash, to your point, Wes. So
Now, okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
so I had another question I wanted to get your thoughts on, but did you have more on this one?
No, no, that's all.
Okay, so question number two that we'll go through. So what are the pros and cons of different debt payoff methods? And I think I'll just turn my screen on real quick here to kind of be able to point to this while I talk. So there's a couple different ways, we can do debt payoff, and this is, generally kind of what we all base it off of is borrowing from the policy so that we can, pay something off and then recapture that payment back to our policy. But there's some nuances, and I think that there's differences of opinions on how this works. So I think there's a couple different ways we could do this. So I'll instead of just listing them out, I'll just let you talk through what's your preferred way of kind of going through this debt payoff, assuming we've got multiple, different cards or loans that we're making payments to.
Yeah. So the strategy for debt payoff and policy loan payoff or policy loan payback, I think really boils down to where the client's at in terms of their financial skills. Okay. So if somebody's generally very disciplined with money, taking a policy loan, paying off debt, freeing up that monthly payment that was going out the door to Chase, Citi, MasterCard, whoever,
Mm-hmm.
and taking that monthly payment and stacking that onto the next debt that they're paying off, mathematically, that makes the most sense and is the most efficient from a purely numbers standpoint.
Agreed. Yeah.
However, there's a behavioral element that's at play
Yep.
where some people have the discipline to follow that path. I take a policy loan, I pay off credit card A, I recapture that monthly payment, I stack that monthly payment onto the next debt on the line, in line, and that helps accelerate my debt snowball, okay, or debt avalanche, whatever approach they're taking. That makes total sense mathematically, but there's the humanity element to it where it doesn't always play out that clean.
Yeah.
And life happens and we forget about things, and that can unless it's set up automated, that can spiral out of control.
True.
Or they
True.
recapture that money and they spend it and
Yep.
and making that progress. So I think meeting the client where they're at, having an honest conversation with them, asking them, hey, are you pretty disciplined with money, or are you a spender? If they're a spender and they'll admit that, I think they should start paying the policy loan back as soon as they recapture a monthly payment.
So that second option, that would be paying off this first item here, taking that monthly payment, and then instead of rolling it forward to debt number two, redirecting it back through the segregated account and then back up to the policy to repay the loan. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah. Yep.
Correct.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Building, because in that process, not only are they paying back the policy loan and restoring what they borrowed at that throughout that same time frame, they're funding premium and increasing the amount of loan availability as well. So they're
Exactly. Yep.
increasing, I call it the credit limit, right? They're increasing their credit limit by funding premium and building cash value, but they're also restoring what was already borrowed. So
Own against the policy. Yeah.
So they'll have that chunk to take and pay off the next one and repeat that process. You know, numerically, mathematically, that's slightly less efficient, slightly. But I think that loss of efficiency there, that slight loss of efficiency, is a small price to pay to more effectively operate their personal banking system.
Right. Yep. Yeah, my approach is similar to yours. I agree. There's that mathematical approach that it's fastest if we just roll those payments down the list and just, kind of sprint through those debts so that then we can recapture all the payments at once. The math works out better that way. But in Nelson, Nash in Becoming Your Own Banker, he talked a lot about the human behavior elements in that first big section of the black book. So I think that's important. We just have that discussion about that. I like what you said about that. One variation that I've been adding in as I'm kind of advising clients on this based off of their situation is, even if they want to kind of snowball the debts down from one to another to the next, even just taking part of this payment and setting up like an interest only payment to go back to the policy. I'm a big fan of that because I think that still gets the sorry guys, my little guy's coming in. That still gets that habit going of being able to do every time we take a loan from our bank, we start putting something back in each and every month, and we start feeling that and just seeing that the money's going. And that's and again, it kind of takes that scariness out of it, that that if you're paying back a loan, that money's just gone. It's really just like that savings transfer of taking it from your main checking account, putting it back into the bank of Ethan or Wesley. And I'll even tell them is we estimate what those quarterly loans are going to be just by taking your premiums. If I'm paying $50 a month as like an interest only payment, now every quarter I'm going to have another $150. Oops, sorry. There we go. $150 because I put three $50 payments in, and then I'll still take it back out to keep crushing through those credit cards or so on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that approach because you're really getting the best of both worlds there,
Yeah.
because that interest only payment is handling the human behavior element
Yes.
and maintaining a good healthy cash value position while also reaping the mathematical benefits. I think that's probably the ideal way to do to really approach.
Yeah.
Because
And
at the end of the day, there's a saying, I forget where I read it, but it's something like an imperfect plan that's executed consistently beats a perfect plan that's not followed, or something along those lines. So it's easy to say, well, mathematically it makes most sense to do it this way. But if people were that dedicated to the mathematics of things, they probably wouldn't be in 30% interest credit cards.
right. Yeah. We get and we all have to look in the mirror, kind of understand where we started. You made the first good decision by starting IBC, but you haven't arrived yet. You still have more learning and growth to do, and that just takes some some honesty and accountability to do. So good. Yeah, I think it was General Patton that said something. I think a lot of people have said something like that. But yeah, that an 80% plan today is better than a 100% perfect plan tomorrow, and that just starting is good. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I think that too. There's a lot of there can be a lot of paperwork or administrative steps to this, and really that's where you and I and the whole I team of where we're really where we can really advocate and help the client is to show them, like, look, here's exactly how you go through these steps. We've got resources on exactly how to set this up. You're not doing this alone. You've got us to lean on here and how to do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're here for. It's to
Yeah.
help the clients actually do IBC, because at the end of the day,
Yes, sir.
it's a skill set that you have to learn and develop.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we kind of covered our agenda for today, Wesley. So we'll have to do another one of these again soon. and go through some more topics, or maybe even get some client input on things we can kind of chat through and dissect a little bit. You got
Yeah.
any final thoughts for today, man?
No, I appreciate you taking the time and really facilitating putting this sort of thing together. And I would love to hear people's feedback on it. And if there's questions or topics that others would like to learn more about or listen in on a conversation between you and I on a particular question, definitely let us know and we'd be happy to do it.
For sure. All right. Well, thank you again, Wesley, and thank you to anybody who might be watching this. And keep on banking, keep on paying back those policy loans to recapitalize your bank. So, all right. Have a good day. See ya.
See you, Ethan.